Welcome back, everyone. This is the Limit Breakers, and today we're going to talk about one of the greatest hits of Nintendo, in fact, one of the biggest icons of all of console multiplayer, Super Smash Bros. Now, this game, among other things, I believe has the unique quality, in fact, of becoming intimately tied to a gamer's pride. And I look forward to hearing what my fellow brethren have to say about it as we go forward.
So, Justin, are you pretty ready to get smashed or smash some people today?
I have never been more ready in my life, I don't think.
How about you, Steve?
Oh yeah.
Well, on that note, welcome to the Limit Breakers podcast, everybody. How's it going? This is our third official episode actually detailing a game, fourth if you count the introduction, and we are really excited to be back with you. As Steve mentioned in the intro, we are talking about the whole Super Smash Bros. Series today, but before we get started on that, as we've done the last couple episodes, why don't we talk a little bit about what we've done in the meantime, gaming-wise and otherwise. So, you guys want me to get started, or are you chomping at the bit to talk about your latest gaming exploits?
Why don't you go ahead, Cam?
Well, it actually ties in pretty closely to what we talked about last time because, as Steve and I mentioned, they just released a bunch of SNES classics on the 3DS. And, as I mentioned, I bought nearly every one of them as soon as they were released. Well, I finally got around to actually playing one of those, which is Super Metroid, which, as has been the case for quite some time, is considered sort of a must-play cornerstone game. And I've loved it so far. It's actually kind of hilarious that being one of my favorite games of all time, Symphony of the Night, that's always been considered a Metroidvania game, and I knew that it was heavily inspired by Super Metroid, but playing it, it's actually disturbing how similar the games are. Like, Metroid has its own spin and Castlevania has its own spin, but so much about the game was clearly taken directly from Super Metroid that it's almost hard for me not to like it because I love the other so much. It's like, I don't see how you can not love one if you already love the other. Obviously, it has a very Samus-y, very futuristic, very blaster-heavy interface as opposed to Castlevania, but just the level design, the atmosphere, the action, all really, really cool. I don't actually know how big the game is, so I have no idea how far I am in it after like an hour or so, but I've enjoyed it so far and probably plan to beat that before I start playing anything else.
Very cool.
I would
Very
recommend
cool.
it. Recommend it for sure.
In my own case, I've really been getting my feet wet with the range of mobile MMOs that are out there, and I haven't gotten deep into any of them yet. But I've touched upon all of them, just trying to get a sense of what really is available for a mobile gamer who had such a wonderful experience playing EverQuest, as we talked about. And there are some really fascinating ones. I've been following very closely an upcoming game called Albion Online, which is actually an MMO that will be the first cross-platform MMO in history to be both mobile and non-mobile, all on a single server and all accessible from any gaming device, of course, which seems pretty exciting to me. Very, very heavy emphasis on PvP, among other things. Much more inspired, I would say, actually by Ultima Online than any of the more recent titles. I've actually been playing a few games called Legion of Heroes, Legendborn, Order and Chaos 2, Redemption, and Parallel Mafia. All of them have their merits and downsides, and I'm trying to figure out which of them I'm going to stick with. But I've actually been particularly impressed by Legion of Heroes, which is an MMO that also has a very tactical battle system, grid-based, and card system. It's hard to describe, but it's a card system that really adds for a lot of replayability. So I've been enjoying the MMO mobile world.
Yeah, despite my slight aversion to mobile gaming, I do have to say that anything that is able to really push forward in cross-platform play at this point is really cool to me. So it's cool to hear that they're exploring more of this ability to link up people that want to play on one platform versus another with each other, so it's not computer PC master race people versus mobile people. It'll be a chance for both to play together.
Absolutely, and it'll be interesting to see how they manage to do it without giving certain players a disadvantage.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I have high hopes.
Justin?
Well, I myself have been playing Super Smash Bros. Brawl because I was prepared to talk about the Super Smash Bros. Episode today, and I was just kind of going through and playing some of the, going through the storyline, going through some of the event modes and things like that, and just kind of reacquainting myself with some of the characters and some of the levels, and just really kind of getting back into that, and also trying to hopefully sharpen my skills and beat the two of you in a future Super Smash Brawl.
I mean, not gonna happen.
Are you saying you're such a noob that you had to replay the game the last 2 days just to even be able to talk about it?
I'm saying that I was replaying the game so that I could get better at it and beat you guys in a duel.
Fair enough. Well, before we get into the episode proper, the one other thing I do want to mention, and it was incredibly cool because this awesome group of people actually liked one of our tweets this weekend. So,
Are you sure it wasn't you?
Yeah, I hacked their account. I got on. I liked our comment. And I got back off without them knowing.
Oh,
but no, it's Pure Ownage. Actually, I know Justin shouted out to them in a previous episode. I know they're more of a satire and not actual like gaming commentary like we are, but in the sort of general spectrum of just gaming related media, I've got to say if they aren't my favorite piece of gaming media in general, they're damn near the top. And they just released their feature-length film, which I personally haven't watched yet, but I know we're all looking forward to seeing. And if it's anything like the show, it's going to be freaking hilarious. So if you're into Pure Ownage, definitely check the movie out. If you're not, they're like a gaming mockumentary series and you're missing out by not watching it. So awesome to those guys for making it, and hopefully it's as funny as I think it's going to be. Without further ado, let's get into the actual talk of the Super Smash Bros. Series, which is going to be a pretty sharp left turn from our last episode because we went from sort of this really emotional, really narrative-driven, really epic game to probably one of the most just flat-out fun and really just sort of back-to-basics games I think I've ever played, and that's this whole Super Smash Bros. Series as a whole. So, Justin, do you have the actual date there of when the first game was released?
I do. It was 1999 for the Nintendo 64.
Which would make us all, I guess, between 10 and 12 years old when it came out?
That's right.
To give you a sense of where we were when we first played it. I have an incredibly vivid memory of the first time I was ever even aware of Smash Brothers. I don't know about you guys, but I distinctly remember that the only reason I was initially interested in the game is because Steven had mentioned that you could actually throw Pokeballs in the game. And more so than even any of the aspects of fighting, I just wanted so bad to see these 3D Pokemon on the screen that I remember basically begging him to go back and put it on for me so I could see these, what is ultimately a pretty tiny portion of the game, really. But that was what got me interested, and the game itself is what made me stay. But for some reason, being a big Pokemon fan at the time, that was like my greatest joy and wish in the world, was just to see this one element of the game. Do you guys have kind of vivid memories at all of?
I think that definitely goes for both of us. I know as soon as I caught wind of the game, I pre-ordered it well before it was released. And at the time I was knees deep in Super Mario 64, Star Fox, Pokemon, and a number of Nintendo titles that just Super Smash Brothers seemed to combine so perfectly into something that it was hard to imagine something that would have appealed to me more given my interests at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, going to Steve's house was kind of where it all culminated for that game for me. And I think what the two of you were talking about with Pokeballs, I have vivid memories of just going in, setting like the only items in the game to be in like only baseball bats or only like the swords and things like that, and just smashing everybody like incessantly, and just it was complete insanity at the time, and I had no idea what the hell was going on.
I do remember as soon as I got the game, I was, as always, I was determined to do everything possible in the shortest amount of time. And I remember one of those things was unlocking Ness, actually, as a character, which was a little bit harder, perhaps, than unlocking the other characters. In any case, I remember I was just like so emotionally invested in the game that just within like 2 days of playing, I remember I had a duel with Ness, and the way you unlock characters in this game, of course, is you actually have to duel them before they become playable by you. And and I went through the challenge of getting to Ness, but every time I got to him, he always beat me one-on-one, and it happened like 6 times in a row, and I was so enormously depressed. It was actually definitely a low point in my gaming history.
So before we dig any deeper, I guess for the uninitiated, the Super Smash Bros. Series is a multiplayer Nintendo fighting game that's just very fun, very colorful, and features an absolute crazy host of multiple console characters, levels, all these things that are just kind of love letters and throwbacks to old Nintendo standbys. There's 4 versions of the game. The first one, as Justin mentioned, came out in '99 for the 64, but there's been a version for every Nintendo main console since. There was Melee for the GameCube, there was Brawl for the Wii, and now there's just Super Smash Bros. Wii U for the Wii U. And as a point of reference, maybe going forward, I'm going to primarily be basing my advice and my memories on the first game and the last game, the 64 version and the Wii U version, because those are the ones I know best. I don't know if you guys have an affinity for one of the 4 games more so than the others. Maybe we just want to voice that now so people know what we're going to be talking about the most. I don't want to say this character really owns, and then they're thinking of the one version where their character actually sucks. So,
Oh well, yeah. I mean, at this point, I've played all the versions at length, I'd say, but nothing quite compares to the N64 version for me. I do consider myself, I suppose, a purist, as many would.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm like more like him in that the first and the last ones are the 2 biggest ones that stand out to me. Although I will probably delve into Super Smash Bros. Brawl a little bit just for the pure fact that I own it. And that is the only one I actually do own.
So if I'm not mistaken, I think the first 3 you could play with up to 4 players, and now the most recent one through online and through local multiplayer you can play up to 8. But for the most part, these games are 1 to 4 player multiplayer fighting. Does that sound correct?
Sounds correct to me.
Yeah, no, I mean that's exactly what I remember, and I think in fact the movement to the 8-player capability and the online matches, I think that's a pretty big development in the series itself.
And I can say when you're playing 8 players on some of the smaller maps, it's almost chaos to the point of pure absurdity. So if you're looking for that, absolutely check it out. But we've had some experiences where we're like, how the hell are 8 people supposed to be on this level right now? But let's get in real quickly into what I think is probably my favorite aspect of the game as a whole. And you guys can obviously touch on what you like the most about it. But what I've always loved about the series is how, to me, it's such an awesome love letter to not only Nintendo as a franchise and a company, but just to gaming in general. Like, I'm struggling to think of any other game that's ever referenced or featured more characters and levels and stages from different games ever than Smash. I mean, the first game alone had a bunch of like cool characters that spanned a bunch of franchises, but by now, between the downloadable characters and the characters already in the game, you're talking about legitimately like characters from his games as popular and well known as the Mario series, all the way down to relatively obscure stuff that's actually introduced me to new games because they were in Smash. Steve referenced Ness, which at the time I had no idea what Ness was from whatsoever. I remember actually even asking, like, is he actually from a game or is he just made for Super Smash Brothers? And then, of course, now I'm well aware that he's from Earthbound, and Earthbound has gone on to become one of my favorite games ever. So it's so cool how they made a game where it seemed like their first goal was making a fun fighting multiplayer game, but the second goal on that list had to be, let's just include as much fun, awesome, referential gaming stuff as we possibly can. So basically anyone that plays it will have stuff they recognize in it, from the most casual gamer to the most hardcore gamer.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. And I think now, I mean, with the evolution of the gaming franchise, and the fact that the games itself, appeal to a family age level, like, or I guess really what I'm trying to say is people of all ages would be the easier way of saying that, is that it's easy for other, I don't know, Sony and gaming companies to incorporate their characters because it gives them publicity, at all age ranges and promotes their games. So, I mean, like you had Cloud, which we just recently talked about last week in the Final Fantasy VII episode, is and makes an appearance in the newest Smash Brothers. And I think it's really nice to be able to kind of have that publicity and notoriety across all age ranges.
I do think the way that such a simple combination of elements exposes people to a wide variety of games and themes is a really good thing. I remember specifically when I was playing Brawl one time, my friends and I were playing on the Metal Gear Solid stage, and I was like, wow, that track is really catchy. So I started playing that stage over and over again because I loved the different music tracks that the game had in it. And then I ended up looking up, okay, like what Metal Gear games are these tracks actually from? What times in the game are they played? Suddenly I was lost in the whole like Metal Gear plot line, which is enormous, and I did not finish understanding in a single day. But that just gives you a sense, just simple track from Metal Gear, and suddenly I am blown away by an epic story.
And I think that is like such a perfect way of referencing it, because the game doesn't require you to know anything about these things previous. It's not like your enjoyment of the game is lessened or you're going to be worse at it because you're not familiar with these characters or these references. But it's just so fun, and the characters are so easy to get into, even if you're not familiar with them, that it really does engender sort of like a greater interest in, oh, I love playing with this character. They're really fun to play. I'm not exactly sure where they're from, but maybe the game they're from is actually pretty fun too. especially the newest game. Ness was I think the best example in the original game, but in the most recent Wii U version, that was the case for me with both Lucina and Robin from Fire Emblem Awakening, which I went on to play and love, and also Shulk from Xenoblade Chronicles are like characters that the average person playing Smash probably isn't aware of. But if even a couple of people got turned onto those games because they liked the music or the stage or the character, then that's like a double whammy for Nintendo of making a really fun game, but getting people drawn into their other games just by virtue of Smash being so awesome. Is there any characters you guys sort of, Steve just mentioned it perfectly with Metal Gear, but any additional characters for you, Steve, or any for you, Justin, that you kind of had an added interest in because of Smash that you didn't know before?
I mean, for me, my characters are really just based on how well I'm able to kind of stay in the game and have a chance at beating you guys. But I think the main characters, at least the ones I play now, are Rob, Charizard, Meta Knight, and some of those characters are definitely really cool. And I wouldn't mind being able to go back, like particularly like Meta Knight seems like a really cool character. But for me, like those characters in the game have a lot of, I don't want to say range necessarily, but they have range in the sense more of like having the ability to come back off the ledge and like not die or be knocked off the screen as easily. And
It's called recovery, Justin.
thank you, that's the perfect word. Recovery.
Justin is beginning this episode putting his noobism on display, so as we go on, you will be increasingly aware of how that comes to pass. But anything else along the Metal Gear lines for you, Steve? I know you and I have talked about like a lot of the cool hidden stuff in Smash that you can actually unlock and stuff, but I didn't know if there was any other amongst the 4 games sort of stages or characters that ever piqued your interest in particular.
Yeah, I'd actually say I really enjoyed both Roy and Ike as characters, just classic two-handed swordsmen and their respective series actually that I enjoyed looking into as well. Although as far as actual gameplay, I mean I'd say my characters are a little bit different, and I'd be happy to touch on that right now. Actually, my first true favorite character by far, partly because of the challenge that went into unlocking him, I suppose, was Ness, without a doubt. And looking back, I think it was a little bit unfortunate that he was my favorite character, because I think it's pretty widely agreed upon that he's overpowered in the N64 version. Just his down spike just comes out so quick. His recovery is extraordinary, and his upbeat triple jump, of course, requires a lot of time to master, but once it is mastered, it's one of the most powerful recoveries in the game. And so I loved playing Ness, as I came to realize that he really was overpowered, and that perhaps my winning was more than just the product of my skill, but actually the fact he was ridiculous. I started gravitating more towards traditionally underrated characters. One particular character who, Justin in particular, you might understand this, has really terrible recovery in the N64 version, Link. Link is a character that gets a lot of hate just because of how difficult it is to come back off once you're off the ledge. But what I found is when you use him tactically, when you really keep your enemy under extremely high pressure with arrows, bombs, boomerang, particularly the boomerang, one of the best projectiles in the entire game, Link makes for an incredible force to be reckoned with. And he's actually my favorite character today to play from the classic Super Smash Brothers.
Who do you like to play with, Justin? I'm afraid to ask.
For me, I think probably Meta Knight's probably my go-to right now.
Oh, I'll rate you with Meta Knight, but go on.
That's very true, probably. I think initially my original favorite character from the first one was Luigi, and I don't know that I had a particular reason for that other than I just seemed to suck the least with him. But
I think some of my most damaging, psychologically traumatic gaming memories in the N64 version were of either being PK fired by Steve and then baseball batted off, or just being spammed with green fireballs by Justin as Luigi. So it seemed like no matter how well or bad I was playing in any given match, I could expect a heavy dose of both of those things, and it still kind of haunts me to this day.
I will say that both Luigi and Jigglypuff deserve particular note as, I would say, the most annoying characters for the people who have come to master the timing of their respective up B and down B moves, just because of the type of force that goes into them. Just really disproportional and annoying.
As will be no surprise to Justin or Steve, throughout all 4 games in the series, especially the older games, but certainly still now, I was always drawn to the heavier, big characters. I think because it's a very easy game to play it's just such a fun game that can create so many funny situations that any big, really dramatic characters where you either got absolutely crushed or absolutely crushed someone just by virtue of the damage they did always just struck me as really fun and funny to play. So it almost felt like I wanted to either win in dramatic, funny fashion or lose in dramatic, funny fashion. And there was really no better way to do that than with a fully charged DK punch or a Bowser, butt stomp or whatever you want to call it. And I will say to this day, nothing really gets a funnier or bigger laugh for me or, in my favor than grabbing someone with DK and jumping off the edge to kill you both. I know the first time I did that when we all played the N64 version, I was laughing so hard at the concept of it while diving off that I think I fell out of my chair. But for anyone out there who still wants to just really piss their friends off, give that a try when they're not paying attention.
I will say DK features Cam in one of my favorite specialized combat modes that my friend Alan actually shared with me called Monkey Bombing. I don't know if you've ever heard of this actually, but it's when 4 people play Super Smash Brothers. They all play as DK actually, so you have different color variations on DK. And you only have one item you can use, and it's the bomb, and it's very high appearance. So basically, you are in a death match of just bombs everywhere with a massive character that can't avoid them. And it's a fantastic game. I recommend you check out when you're feeling particularly frivolous.
Just the thought of that stresses me out so much because of the way the bombs appear above you and then fall down. The actual thought of your characters taking up 90% of the level and just having to dodge bombs the whole time is actually pretty funny. I think what you just referenced kind of leads us into the next point so well, and that's I'm also struggling to think of another game that has so much variety and has almost as much depth as you want to ascribe to it. It's a really, really easy game to pick up, just plug in some controllers and play really casually. And if you want to do that, there's about a million modes to do that in. There's just straight up versus mode where you can do stock lives or timed. There's all these crazy events. There's usually challenges. There's a one-player mode where you can either fight through different enemies in almost like a Mortal Kombat fashion, or you can go through an actual storyline. I mean, the game's got a ton of playable content. But what's also cool about it is if you want to play it as a more serious fighting game, the balance and the depth and the mechanics are absolutely there to do that at. Now, I myself consider myself to probably be a hair above average, but never anywhere near really great at the game. So I never really got into the side of it where I was actually calculating, the milliseconds it took for someone to recover off the ledge or the exact percentage that an attack does. But if you want to do that, you absolutely can. And the competitive scene is actually, some of the videos of the guys playing in pro tournaments it's kind of disturbing to think that you could actually be that good at the game. But have you guys ever seen any of those?
Oh, I really have, and I think you nailed it when you talked about really just the range of the game, from just sort of a mindless party game to something that can be extremely complex, much more strategic, that you see in the higher ends. In my own experience, I think one of the greatest parts of the game is the fact that for some reason, and I can't figure out why, but it's an unserious game that people can't help but take seriously. I've yet to meet a serious gamer who does not claim that they are the best Super Smash Brothers player in, the state, whatnot. And because of that, it's actually a great game analogous to Pool to really make some money on. It's the only game I can think of off the top of my head that I've actually won upwards of $1,000 off of really just challenging people at their pride, put your money where your mouth is. And I love that aspect of the game.
I think it speaks to both the popularity of the game and its wide range of fans, I guess you could call it, that it's one of the few games that you could show up to a kid's birthday party and everyone will pick up controllers and play and have a good time, or at a college party and everyone will still pick up controllers and have a good time. People that have sort of moved on from video games that might play a round of COD every now and then, but for the most part don't really like gaming, still seem to be Super Smash Brothers fans. The biggest thug or the biggest bro will still have a favorite character in Super Smash Brothers and will still claim he can beat you. Whereas if you even brought up, a Final Fantasy game, they'd say, yeah, who is this nerdy piece of bleep? But I know, because we all played Super Smash Brothers growing up, but I know you played quite a bit, Steve, even in college, and obviously we played through college and even now, and it still remains pretty popular. So it really does have the virtue of sort of being just a universally fun thing that you never really feel too old for, I guess you could say. Whereas some games, some people kind of do.
I mean, I've played in yeah, in college I've played in Super Smash Brother tournaments. I've played nights where I was perilously drunk. I've played on occasions where I was just brainstorming a thesis for a paper and just needed to do something mindless. And that level, yeah, that type of range the game has, it's just it's like a lifelong friend. It can stay with you through the good times and the bad, and that's what I love about it.
Were your grades ever improved, Justin, because of Super Smash Brothers? Or
I mean, I'd like to think so, but actually probably not. Um, no, yeah, I think Nintendo. This is what Nintendo does best. I mean, they just they have the whole social thing down, the social aspect of gaming down. You have so many different characters from so many different games, and they have the authority and license to do that. Where like you have Marvel versus Capcom and things like that, where you have a similar thing, but it's not like this is taking characters from since you were a kid through now and just putting them all in one game. And so there's something for everybody in that. And I think what you guys were talking about before with, people taking it seriously, and it's, even though it's it seems like such an easy game, I think that is why people take it seriously, because it seems like something that you should just excel at based on like the very nature of it. It's like, I mean, the whole purpose is like that anybody can pick it up and play it. So to be able to be destroyed so easily by somebody is definitely very frustrating.
And it's a very good aspect of any game for something to be easy to pick up but difficult to master. I feel like that's a hard line to walk, because a lot of games are either just turn a lot of players off based on their difficulty, or they don't have the depth to actually let you really dig into it. But this is like, my grandmother could pick up a controller and understand how to play, but takes a very particular, very good person to actually come even close to mastering the combat. So it really has that going for it. Now, another thing that really I like, and it feeds into the same point, is that amongst my favorite memories of the game are really on both sides of the coin. There's some really non-serious whatsoever, very ludicrous, absurd moments we had playing that I love, and actually some relatively competitive 2-on-2 online matches that Steve and I played that was on the complete other end of the spectrum, where we were legitimately trying to win, we were legitimately trying to get better. And I think it's just such a cool aspect of the game, that the same game that we could play after a couple drinks, do crazy stuff like, seeing Jigglypuff with an energy sword trying to crush Snake, can also be the same game where we can actually be trying out different combinations of characters, playing like heart-stopping matches online with people, going to sudden death and legitimately like not breathing until we either lost or won. I can't think of many other games where you could have experiences that different within the same game. I know for a while there, we were actually playing pretty regularly and got pretty decent, but I just think it's so awesome that the game could have that level of variety and depth to it.
I want to talk a little bit about actually the control system. Now, going from N64 to the Wii U now, how do you guys feel that the change in the control, like really just the controllers themselves, have like impacted the gameplay? I know like right now in the Wii U version, you have the ability to use GameCube and Wii and Wii U. So using the nunchuck and just all of those different components and having the addition of more buttons just since the original game, like how do you guys feel that contributes to your performance in the game as it's evolved?
Well, first of all, a giant middle finger to the people who bought in bulk all the GameCube adapters when they came out, because that really pissed me off. That I was so looking forward to us all playing the Wii U version with GameCube controllers, and 2 days after its launch, they were on Amazon for $150. So if you're one of those people, unsubscribe from our podcast. I don't want you listening anymore. But on a serious note, Steve can probably speak a little bit better than I can about. I know he's pretty adept at all the different controllers. I, for one, always sucked with the Wiimote. Never really liked playing with it. But did you have a real preference, or did it not matter to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think without a doubt, I prefer the GameCube controller and the N64 controller, which of course are really the same exact setup. I think I've learned to play with a Wiimote, a nunchuck, as many people have, and it works. It's enjoyable, and when you're in a spirit in which the game is more mindless and just goofy, works perfectly fine. I think when you are feeling that competitive edge, you want to get that advantage, and that's when I normally gravitate to the GameCube and the N64 controllers.
And it's actually been funny because it seems like people, for the most part, avoid the actual Wii U gamepad as a controller like the plague. I don't think anyone who plays the game seriously actually uses it, but I prefer that because I've used it so much now. I've gotten used to actually playing on the gamepad itself, but usually when I pass it around and say, do you want to use the gamepad, everyone kind of just stares at me like, what the hell are you doing? No one plays on the thing. But did you have a preference, Justin? I know we'd always kind of mix up controllers.
For me, I think I would stick to the GameCube or the N64 controller purely just because it's more similar to the standardized controller across platforms. And I feel like when I have the Wiimote in my hands, I always just kind of feel like a need to swing it around because in a lot of other games, like sports games and things like that, I mean, you're kind of like in fighting games and just swinging the thing around and have to have it strapped to your wrist and stuff.
Some of us have suffered injuries as a result of controller swinging, but
it did actually make me laugh that last weekend after we recorded the episode on Final Fantasy VII, we actually watched Game of Thrones together and then played a little bit of Smash, and seeing one of our friend's younger brothers who wasn't that adept pick up the Wiimote and actually be swinging it around trying to play as if like he was going to control his character through motion control was actually kind of a funny thing to see.
Yeah. But to add just a little bit of substance, I think, to the discussion, the difference between controllers, I do think the one thing that truly is significant is that whereas on an N64 or GameCube controller, you have a separate button to throw items and to throw people, frankly, on the Wiimote, you do need to press more than one button at once. And it's a minor thing, but it actually feels like a pretty big deal when you're in the heat of the action.
Yeah, I feel like I've had a lot of trouble myself just using the Wiimote, and I hope to get better at it in the future.
Now, maybe what we've said so far hasn't exactly inspired you as to our own personal skill at the game, but I can attest to the fact that Justin's probably the least experienced, but pretty decent himself. I've played a bit more, and I'm kind of middle of the road. Steve's quite good, and if nothing else, I do feel like we can at least impart upon you some general tips and tricks. If you're not very experienced at the game and kind of want to just get your foot in the door, or if you're decent, just want to add something to your repertoire, I think we got a couple things to tell you right now that might help you a little bit just in playing. Again, it's not really the kind of game that necessitates you being a master to have fun at it, but it's also no fun to get absolutely destroyed every round, as I can certainly attest to. So first thing that comes to mind for me when we talk about that is it doesn't seem like people utilize grabbing and throwing enough in Smash. I know it's sort of a weird thing to get in the habit of doing because it almost feels sort of like overkill or boring to repeatedly just keep grabbing someone, but there's so many chances in the game when someone's setting up to use something on you or really countering you well that could be completely countered on your part by just grabbing them each time they try to do it, and yet no one actually seems to do that so much. So if you're new to the game, you're getting crushed by someone and want to neutralize it a bit, get in the habit of grabbing them when they try to set things up against you. And not only grabbing them, but I think every character in the game, particularly the big people, but I think every character, when they grab someone, can do a bit more damage by hitting them while holding them before they throw them. If you time that right, that's actually really, really powerful.
Yeah, I think for someone just getting into Super Smash Bros., specifically the N64 version, I do think you should start there because it's just so historic in the series. I would say one of the most important things, actually, is to just pick a few characters and learn them well. And what I mean by that is it's not about mastering every particular move. It's about learning where, in general, the strengths of characters are. So some characters are very strong in the air. Some characters are very strong on the ground. Some characters have very fast throws. Some characters have very slow throws. And if you pick only one character to master at a time, then you're not really going to learn about your opponents. If you try to just play random, you're never really going to have the time to focus. You need to pick about 3 to 4 characters to really go with, cycle through, and play consistently to learn where their strengths are. And once you've gotten a general understanding of the strengths of your favorite characters, stick with them for a time and really learn to master timing of their moves and timing of things like shields, rolls, air dodges, and usually basic 2 to 3 hit combos. Almost all characters have some really strong 2 to 3 hit combos. A really classic one, Jigglypuff, coming out of the air, down A, corkscrew, knocks the character up into an up A smash. Works like a charm, and it will carry you through 80% of the matches you play.
And I feel like sometimes people just ignore the chance to build up percentage slowly on an opponent. It seems like everyone always wants to go for the heavy-hitting big finisher like every single time, instead of acknowledging that sometimes playing a little bit more defensively, getting a hit in here or there, building up the percentage on the opponent is the way you actually want to go about it. Everyone wants to sit back with Captain Falcon and just Falcon punch over and over till it finally hits someone. But while you're doing that, the guy's crushing you, building you up slowly but surely, and you end up just wondering why you keep losing. But sometimes it's the non-sexy, just standard, medium, lightweight attacks, getting in the air when you need to, shielding, dodging, that actually win you matches. It's not all about just sitting back and using smash attacks over and over until you finally hit someone. I mean, that can make for funny situations, but a half decent player is going to crush you if you do that. Anything stand out to you, Justin, that you noticed when you were playing recently?
I mean, for me, I think a big reason that I was so awful for so long was because I never really had the opportunity, primarily because I didn't own a Smash Brothers game, to really sit down and kind of explore all the different button combinations and things that you even could do. Like, there was times where, I'd been playing it maybe like several dozen times and I just discovered something new for the first time. So for me, it was being able to go to like the training zone in Brawl and just kind of set the PC to various levels and kind of just test my skill out against different level NPCs and kind of just learn the game that way and just experiment, explore, and really, I mean, even though like the storyline and the campaigns aren't really like that the main appeal of the game, it to many people it's also a very good way to just kind of figure out where you're at and learn your skills and improve that way. Now my other suggestion is, if you're awful at the game, and this won't really win you any matches, but it'll just piss people off, which is fine because that might be your goal as well, is to really just do this. If you want to do the same thing over and over again, I annoy the hell out of people with like Meta Knight's like Flame Tornado, and then or Charizard's like Smash. And for me, using those characters, like I said, they have a good recovery. They're able to hopefully pretty easily avoid like a fall off the edge because they can either fly or cover a long range across the level.
I will not under any circumstances endorse Justin's playstyle here. What I will do is add, I would say, just two more thoughts to my own personal repertoire of tips. So this one should be pretty obvious to most people, but vast majority of characters have an upbeat triple jump, after which you're incredibly vulnerable until you hit the ground, and even for a split second while you're on the ground. And so learn to use your up B in the right circumstances. Wait to use it when you can minimize your vulnerability, and also learn to spot when people are using their up B, knowing that you're going to have a second window to knock them out. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize is that just when you're on a level with platforms, you're always at an advantage when you are below your opponent, because getting through that platform, they have to do something specific to get through it, in which they can't actually attack you during that time. But it's a really simple thing. Getting below your opponent on any level with platforms is actually a really big advantage.
I think edge guarding is another big aspect of that too. It's that it's often so exciting to see someone you're fighting get smashed off the edge that people tend to get very passive and just sit back and hope that the person's going to die. But if you're feeling a little bit more feisty, a little bit more confident, a little bit better at the game, go off the edge and do everything in your power to keep them from getting back on. A lot of times I'll see people actually die because they very easily could have just stood on the edge and kept someone from coming back, but instead they give the person the chance to get back on the edge, turn the game around in their favor. And it's really just, that's a huge thing the pros do when you watch them play at all, is just, if they have a chance to put you away, they 100% bury you. They don't just smash you off and sit there and hope that you die. They legitimately either meteor spike you off the screen, or they just do everything in their power to make getting back on in your recovery nearly impossible. So
yeah, I think one thing a lot of people don't realize is that, particularly when it comes to edge guarding, going far off the edge to kill someone and then making it back is a play that, people who are just starting the game would strike them as really risky. But as you begin to try it and as you do it more and more, you find that you get a very, very strong sense of exactly the limits of a particular character as far as they can go, and still make it back on. And so it becomes not as risky as it looks, and it's not a surprise that the pros do it all the time.
Yeah, if you're a character that you feel like has a pretty strong recovery system, or you're very comfortable with their recovery, especially if you're playing a character against a character that doesn't, by all means do that, because worst case scenario, you kind of have to just get back on yourself a little bit, but yeah, it shouldn't be that big a deal. Here's a quick question for both you guys that might be interesting. Favorite character, if you had to choose one amongst the whole series, which character and which version of Smash? And also, which Final Smash do you think is the coolest? And again, for the uninitiated who might not have played it, a Final Smash is sort of a special attack that each character gets to do in, I know it's in Brawl and the newest one. I don't think it was in Melee. I think it's just the two newest games.
I think that's right.
Yeah, but essentially it's like a special move you get to do that's in most cases for a lot of characters a one-hit kill, but it's always really powerful. And they're just very extravagant, very grand, very visually cool things each character gets to use. Does anything come to mind for those two questions for you guys? I think I know mine.
My character definitely, as far as just all around favorite amongst the series, I'd have to say Ike. I think he's just such a cool, just two-handed character, heavy but so aesthetically pleasing.
Which version do you like him from the most, would you say?
Definitely the Wii U version. As far as Smash, I actually really like Mario's Final Smash because it's a combination between it's basically a fire like Kamehameha, like a swirling fire Kamehameha, and it's pretty damn cool.
So we just tied in Smash, Mario, and Dragon Ball Z all in one fell swoop for those fans out there. How about you, Justin?
Well, I kind of wish there was DBZ characters in Smash, but suggestion to Nintendo for a future Smash game. I have to think about my favorite character. It's mainly because I don't excel in a particular character that I don't know if I have a favorite one to call upon.
Well, just choose one, damn it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm gonna go with my guns and say Luigi, and that's mainly just because I've played him the majority across the franchise. Yeah, I don't know, Smash Attack. I guess last week, I don't know if it's my favorite one, but I just thought it was pretty funny. Was Pac-Man, just watching him eat everybody on the screen and everybody freaking out. As I got more and more points from just eating everybody up.
That's a pretty hilarious one. I'd have to say probably my favorite character in terms of playing and just overall was actually Sheik, or I guess it was Zelda really from Melee that could turn into Sheik in that version. I think Melee was probably my least favorite of the 4 games just because it felt so much faster to me than the N64 version that it was very hard for me to get used to playing it. But I was really comfortable with Sheik in that game, and Sheik being, or Zelda/Sheik being such a quick character, it fit really well into a game that felt so speed-based. Then my favorite Final Smash, I'd have to say, it's a two-way tie between Mega Man's in Wii U and Shulk's in Wii U. But Shulk's in Wii U, which actually, for people that have played Xenoblade Chronicles will know, brings in characters from that game also that does a giant triple chain attack, which is Ricky, Dunban, and Shulk. It's just such a cool one. And then Mega Man's is such an old style, not anime, but almost anime-like cutscene where all the different Mega Mans come out and shoot that giant beam. Both are just so visually cool and such awesome representations of the games that they come from that it feels so rewarding when you use them because it almost feels for a second like you're being transported to a different game altogether.
I think that really ties back to when we were talking about the way Smash Brothers is a type of love letter to Nintendo fans, but they just do such an incredible job at capturing those parts of these traditional games that we love and representing them so well.
And they make it so enticing to play the game more because a lot of the stuff, as you mentioned, with like unlocking Ness, for instance, you need to play the game more and unlock as rewards in order to get, more tracks musically, more stages, more characters. Yeah, in some cases they're downloadable, but a lot of it is just unlocked via playing the game and achieving certain things. So you have a lot of incentive to play because there's so much awesome stuff to unlock if you do that you're kind of missing out if you don't unlock it all. Now, we haven't touched a lot on sort of maybe our gaming in our later years, but one of the fun ways you can enjoy this game, as is the case with a lot of multiplayer games, is if you want to bring drinking into the equation. Now, we're not here advising anyone to do anything unsavory whilst playing such a powerful game of Smash, but by all means, if you are so inclined to have a beverage or two while playing Smash, it can be a very fun thing that we've certainly done ourselves quite a bit. And there's really no wrong way to do it. If you're having fun playing Smash and you're drinking, that's a combination that in most cases is going to be pretty fun. But if you want to kind of take the Limit Breaker's preferred drinking game route, there are a couple things that I would recommend. Maybe you guys have other stuff you want to add that you think makes it even more fun. But for me, the perfect way to lay out Smash Brothers as a drinking game is play a stock game, 5 lives a person, with as many people as want to play. Every time someone dies, that person has to drink while their character's off the screen. Every time you suicide, jump off yourself without someone actually hitting you, drink twice, because that's like the biggest noob thing you can possibly do. When you're actually eliminated from the game, all 5 of your lives are gone, finish your beer. Hopefully you still have a lot left or else you kind of get off light, but first person out, finish their beer. The first person eliminated of the entire game not only has to finish their beer, but do a shot. and then when it's all over, the person that led that game in kills gets to give out another shot. So if you're playing pretty quickly or playing against people that suck, you can get bombed pretty quickly if you're playing this way. So if you want to kind of take it easy, maybe alter the rules a little bit so someone hasn't done 16 shots of tequila in like 10 minutes. But for the most part, this has led to some very funny times for us. And there's really nothing funnier than when you think you're winning, all of a sudden get destroyed, and all of a sudden you're chugging like 6 drinks at once while trying to recover. It's just the perfect game for that kind of thing.
Oh, it's a hilarious drinking game. I love it, and you described it perfectly, Cam. The only thing I would add to that is if you want to get drunk insanely fast, play exactly that game described, but play it under the monkey bombing specialty I talked about earlier.
I was gonna say that if you want to get drunk extremely fast, just play as awfully as I play.
Well, yeah, I think Justin's kind of soured on drinking in general as a result of his experiences playing Drunken Smash with us. I think there was
It has left a scar.
Quite a number of times where I think it reached a point where people no longer wanted to play because the rate of consumption was such that we would all probably been dead within about an hour had we kept it up. But maybe make it a little bit more mild, slow your roll to make the night last a little bit longer. But if you're so inclined, it's definitely a really, really fun way to enjoy Smash. For a game as open-ended and kind of loose and gigantic as this, I feel like there's not a lot to get into in terms of a lot of specificity when it comes to the story or the background. But is there anything else you guys want to talk about just in terms of maybe how people can enjoy the game a bit more? Anything kind of special you noted or noticed while you were playing, or just general love you might have for the game that we haven't touched on yet?
Honestly, I think we summed it up pretty well. It's a simple game in many ways that nonetheless lends itself to really, really competitive play. And I think it's good to leave it at that.
I did want to comment on what you said earlier, because I agree in a sense and I don't, but it's really neither here nor there particularly. But because there's 4 iterations, I think all 4 could be fun, and all 4 still hold up and are really enjoyable games now. But if someone maybe, could only get one or wanted to experience the game in its truest state, if you could call it that, would you advise they kind of start from the beginning, or would you just say go to the newest one and kind of pick it up from there?
That's a hard question. Honestly, that's very much related to the way we talked about Final Fantasy VII and the way it's received today, as opposed to when it first came out. I think that someone who didn't experience the N64 version of Smash Brothers when it first came out might not be able to enjoy it in the same way that many of us do, unfortunately. And it's no one's fault really. It's just a matter of fact. And so I do think if someone's going to pick up the game, that the Wii U version, for their first game is the one to go with. Having said that, I will always be a purist.
Yeah, I mean, I think the progression from the games, at least from my perspective, is the old original game in 99 feels really slow now. I feel like it's more sort of tactical because the levels for the most part and the gameplay are a bit more slowly paced and a bit more deliberate. So you really have to know what you're doing, or else, people just have too much time to counter you and know exactly how you're going to play it out. Melee got really, really fast. It almost got too fast for me to really comprehend exactly what I was going to be doing, to the point where it kind of like just took me a lot of time to get back into the habit of actually kind of processing what I was seeing as I was playing it. Brawl felt like just the right balance to me, but the levels were so flashy and the characters and the graphics and everything were just so intense that sort of like, it didn't take away from the game, but it almost like made me want to look at the backgrounds and the attacks while I was playing, which led to some pretty horrendous deaths. And the Wii U version just being in HD, being as kind of open-ended and gigantic and awesome as it is, has really sort of been the perfect summation of the series for me. But you can't really go wrong with any of them, as Steve mentioned. I guess it depends on what you're in the mood for, how much money you have to spend. But if you want to get started anywhere, I think you wouldn't be missing out on a whole lot if the Wii U version was your first version. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right.
Which version would you say you died the most horrendously on, Justin?
Probably, I want to say Melee, just because I feel like that's the version we played the longest and lent itself to probably some pretty crazy deaths at that point.
Then everyone go pick up Melee and find whoever is the worst amongst your group of friends and make sure to rub it in. Well, I think we did a pretty good job as a whole of summing up Smash. Like I said, it's a hard game to really not enjoy. It's a hard game to be bad at, but it's the kind of game if you want to give more time to and think more deeply about, you easily can. It kind of gives you back what you put in, and can be as fun and engaging as you want it to be. Really is a love letter to all fans of Nintendo and just gaming in general. So on that note, do you want to do some shout outs before we wrap it up?
Well, seeing as it's Mother's Day, I do want to give a shout out to my mom, whom I love dearly, who put up with a son who played far too many video games, and for that, among other things, definitely deserves some credit.
That is a good mention. I'd have to say that without some of the purchases, rentals, and other very awesome instances of gratitude that my mother allowed for me at that age. I know we talked in the last episode about literally renting a PlayStation from Blockbuster without a memory card, so I couldn't save. But renting a PlayStation from Blockbuster really did set me down a certain gaming path that otherwise I certainly would not have found. So happy Mother's Day to, I'm not sure how many moms listen to our podcast, but if any do,
You might be surprised.
yeah, happy Mother's Day to you. How about you, Justin?
Well, I would be remiss at this point and look like a jerk if I didn't say Happy Mother's Day to my own mother, so I'll go ahead and do that.
For Peter.
Yeah, I think I really personally want to thank so much the people that have already gone ahead and subscribed on YouTube. I know we mentioned in the last episode how cool it would be to hit 100 subs, because then that would allow us to actually make a unique YouTube name. And as soon as we mentioned that, we got a couple subs right away. So I don't know if that was just happenstance or if people were actually cool enough to listen and go do it. But thank you to everyone who did that. Please keep subbing if you think we deserve it. As I said last time, don't just create an account because you feel like we're badgering you. But if you enjoy the podcast and want to help us, please sub on YouTube. I want to mention for the first time here, when we hit 100 subs on YouTube, I will be doing a gaming giveaway that I'm not going to announce what I'm giving away till it gets a little bit closer. But I'll be giving away something from my personal collection to one of those subscribers through a giveaway. And we're also going to do a Q&A video based on viewers' questions once we hit 100 subs. So if you didn't already have enough motivation to go sub to us there, hopefully that'll give you a little added incentive, and hopefully we'll keep marching towards 100. My other two thank yous I wanted to make sure I was doing before we wrapped up. Master of None Gaming is another actual YouTube channel, pseudo podcast, sort of just pseudo video gaming channel. They've been really cool and actually watched a bunch of our stuff, listened to a bunch of our stuff, and also commented most recently on our Final Fantasy VII video. So I wanted to give them a sincere thank you. It's really cool to see another channel of similar mind sort of weighing on our stuff. If you like us, I think you'll like them. So absolutely check out Master of None Gaming. I'll link to their stuff on our social media. And also, as I've been doing almost every episode, this time Reddit/r/JRPGs is where I posted our Final Fantasy VII episode. They were a little bit less receptive than our first two, I think because they're tiring of me posting every single episode there. But a couple people did still upvote it and did give me some feedback. So if you did, thank you. If you didn't, thanks for at least putting up with us while we sort of get our feet wet. And yeah, just a general thank you to everyone that has supported, shared, liked, done anything in the meantime. It really means a lot to us. You guys want to tell them where we can be found on social media?
We have our Facebook page at facebook.com/thelimitbreakerspod. Again, feel free to send us questions, artwork, feedback on this week's episode or past episodes, and we look forward to hearing from you.
No erotic artwork of Justin. We've already gotten a little bit too much of that, and I'm tired of getting it in our emails. So, how about our Twitter, Steve?
So our Twitter can be found at twitter.com/limitbreakerpod.
Our actual podcast website is http, all that good stuff, thelimitbreakers.libsyn.com. That's thelimitbreakers.libsyn.com. And you can email us at thelimitbreakerspod@gmail.com. People have already sent us some stuff. It's been really cool to hear, see, watch. So thank you all so much. Guys, it was a fun episode. I think in the next few weeks, we're going to kind of mix it up and do everything from some gaming culture stuff back to some narrative games. So stay tuned to our social media to see what we're doing. For Justin, Steve, and me, any last words before we peace it?
Peace out.
See you later.
Thanks, guys. Limit Breakers, episode 3.